Alright, so this is going to be part 1.75 of Into the DekuVERSE. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
They took it to 10.
Let me tell you how I come through with the 1-2, kicking shit like kung fu. Treat a bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, little hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the raw fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
So this video is basically a collaboration with Kid Zeus, who is part of the sins. He's the sin of pride. So this is just basically, if you want to know more about what this series is, go check out his video called Into the DekuVERSE, I believe. I'll have a link to it in the descriptions, in the description, and go check that out. But with that being said, this is just a video to kind of introduce my Dekus into it, because if you don't know the general idea, it's basically this big crossover between all the what ifs of Deku, all these Deku what ifs. So if you like that idea, go to his channel and subscribe, watch his video. It's going to be a series that he's going to constantly update from what he says. And so yeah, so the Dekus that I'm going to use for this video are the D4C Deku, the Blacklight Virus Deku, Accelerator Deku, All for One Deku, and then Bond's Power Deku. Because the other ones that I've done, they're not that far in. Things like Shield Hero and Imagine Breaker, they're not that far into the series because I just haven't updated them yet. And I'm not using Danny Phantom because Kid Zeus has his own version. So yeah, that's why I'm not using those those three in particular. So our story actually starts off with D4C Deku. He's actually this is after the these all start between or after their latest video. So part 5 of D4C, Accelerator, and the other ones that's so far out, you know what I mean? So this would just happen right after the sports festival. So this is when he travels between dimensions so he could get around faster. And when he gets into this other dimension, he actually sees something quite different. He's typically used to seeing versions of himself that looks like him, right? The tall, muscular built version of himself, right? Somewhat resembling Ida in a way, in terms of height and body build. So when he sees this pale, kind of scrawnier version of him, he's kind of confused, and he goes up to him and he actually talks to him. And this person that he's actually talking to is the Accelerator Deku. So to make this clearer, for each Deku, I'm going to refer to them as their powers. So Accelerator Deku would just be called Accelerator, D4C would just be called D4C, Blacklight Virus, we'll call him Prototype, and then All for One Deku, we'll call him All for One. So, and Bonds, we'll call him Bond, right? So he tries to approach him, and right before he gets to him, he turns and looks at him, and he says, "What do you want?" And Deku's kind of surprised about this, because usually, alternate versions of him don't do this. So he thinks something's strange and something's, up. And then this is when Accelerator continues and says, "Hey, you kind of," because he's kind of confused, because the person he's talking to looks like him, but just kind of older slash, taller and more muscular. And he's very confused at this point. So what happens next is that D4C basically asks him, "Is your name Izuku Midoriya?" Thinking that maybe it's just a different person from this parallel universe. And he says, "Yes, that's my name. What about it? What do you need? Are you are you trying to get something out of me? And he's kind of, this is when D4C actually tries to touch Deku, but D4C actually stops him using his, or not D4C, Accelerator actually stops him using his, ability to reflect things. He doesn't like reflect it where he like pushes his hand back. He just makes like a solid wall out of the air. And Deku's even more intrigued since all of his like previous versions that he switched out with don't have quirks, but this one seems to, which is also strange. This is when D4C basically explains to Accelerator that they're both Izuku Midoriya, just from different timelines. And he basically says like, why should I believe you? And this is when D4C basically says, why do you think I have such a resemblance to you? So Accelerator is just basically saying like, well, that could just be a coincidence or your quirk. Is there any way you could actually prove it to me? And D4C is basically like, yeah, but I need to touch you first, right? And Accelerator is alright, fine, sure, because he's not really worried about anything because since he's touching him, if he does anything wrong, he could just reverse his blood flow. So D4C basically touches the other Deku or Accelerator, and instead of being going between two spaces and actually going to a different dimension, something different happens. They go into this space in between all the dimensions, and as they're there, they see all these orbs, kind of how Kid Zeus explained, or kind of explained it. Basically, there's these like orbs, and each one of these orbs there's a different like Deku, and in each one there's different Dekus that have different powers. And D4C isn't really used to this because he's always been he's never been in a giant, he has his own pool of reserves where he pulls from Dekus that don't have quirks. So that's why he's never been able to switch himself out with people who do have quirks, if that makes sense, right? So D4C and Accelerator are just looking at this in amazement, and Accelerator is like, alright, I believe you. And D4C Deku's basically saying like, hold up, this isn't usually how it looks, something's off, I don't know what's happening. And then right as he's saying this, they actually get teleported into a kind of city, and this city's it's the city that they have in the show. It's just that it's run down and seems pretty old, and both of them are confused. And Accelerator is like, why did you bring us here? And D4C is like, I didn't, something just pulled us here, I don't know what though. So as they're like exploring, they hear these loud noises and they go to rush there, and what they see is they see two individuals trying to fight this person, this kind of demonic figure. And this demonic figure is actually Omega, which is Kid Zeus' own original character. And he is a very intelligent and arrogant demon with the powers of antimatter, not antimatter, dark matter, and gravity manipulation and regeneration. So we see three characters basically fighting. We see the Bon Deku, the Black Light Virus Deku, and we see All for One Deku. So they Accelerator and D4C basically conclude that these are also alternate versions of themselves since they look so similar, and some of them basically look like Accelerator just with green hair. So they go and rush in, and they ask Bon, since he's the one who looks like he's getting the most hurt, he's being pressed down with a bunch of gravity, and since he's immortal, he doesn't die from this. So Bon's like, oh hey, Izuku and Izuku, and Accelerator's basically saying like, oh, I guess you already know what's happening, but can you tell us? And Bon's basically like, yeah, so there's this demon trying to kill us. I don't know why, but we were all dragged out here. So could you, like, I don't know, help me up, since Accelerator is not getting affected by the gravity since he's just reversing it? He's like, alright, fine. And then he basically goes over Bon and basically reverses the gravity so that he's able to stand up again. And as this is going down, Omega's basically he has his hands full trying to fight, what's his name? Blacklight, or Prototype Deku, and All for One, basically, because their quirks are very versatile. Since Omega doesn't have to focus on Bon, since he was freed, he basically switches his gravity towards All for One and Prototype Deku. So this basically forces them to get down on the ground with only really it has it to the point where they're like trying their best just to stand up, but since they have so much strength, both of them, and it's very hard for either of them to take a step. So this is when Accelerator actually starts walking towards him, and this is when Omega actually tries to hit him with some dark matter. So as it's getting closer and closer to Accelerator, he notices that he can't really reflect it, so he dodges out of the way. And basically this is when Omega says, like, what's the problem? You look really confident. And basically this is when Accelerator would be like, what's that power you have? It's nothing I've ever seen. It doesn't exist in this universe. So this would be the point where Omega would actually tell Accelerator what his powers would be. I think it's within his character being very arrogant to tell him, because he wouldn't really think that they have a chance of winning. And he would basically say that, yeah, you're correct. It's called dark matter. It's something that doesn't exist in your universe, or pretty much any. So if you don't know, Accelerator from a certain magical index has actually gone against people who have dark matter, and has been able to reflect it. He just needs time to make new formulas in his head to counteract this. So at first, the only thing that Accelerator can do, Accelerator from the Deku Accelerator, the only thing they can do right now is just kind of equalize it by using his own pushing or accelerating rocks and wind towards him to kind of counteract all of the attacks that he's trying to do. And they do this for a bit, and what happens next is that Bon Deku actually goes behind him and uses physical hunt on him and basically kind of suplex him. But before he actually achieves this, as he's about to hit the ground, the Omega's actually is basically stabbing him, stabbing Bon Deku, and it's not really having any effect. Yes, it's hurting Bon, but it's not really doing anything. And Bon Deku's basically saying, yeah, that's not going to work on me. And this is when he actually slams him into the ground. And I think this would be around the time that Accelerator Deku would figure out how to reverse or reflect his antimatter. So when the next time what's his name, Omega would stand back up even more furious, and he would basically cut Bon Deku in half, and everyone would be shocked and not know they all knew he had regeneration, but not to what extent. And this is when, Omega would try to like rush Accelerator and try to get him before he dodges. But then this is when Accelerator would be able to reflect it and basically cause Omega to hit himself. And as Omega's stumbling back, this is when Bon actually recovers and goes for a few punches. And he's still amped up from his like drain that he did. So Omega's hit towards Accelerator wasn't as strong as it could be. So Bon would do a barrage of punches, but not really hurting Omega too much. So seeing that he can't really win this fight, I think Omega would kind of just leave the area to try to fight them another day. So yeah, that's how I'm going to end this. If you want to see part 1 of this, go to Kid Zeus's channel. I have a link in the description to his original. Check out the other sins. And with that being said, this is going to be the end of the video. So yeah.
Very rarely do you catch me out. Y'all done specially invited guests me out. Y'all been telling jokes that's gonna stress me out. Soon as I walk in, I'm like, let's be out. I was off.